Hello, I am Laura Pearson. At the beginning of this term, I noticed an abundance of white flowering trees all around Columbus and in my city of Gahanna, Ohio. I learned that these are invasive callery trees and that they push and shade out native vegetation and alter the quality of habitat available to native wildlife. I decided I wanted to compare some aspect of populations of these trees in both a metropolitan park near me and in a nearby subdivision, woodland. I chose to focus my study in two locations. The first is a section of woodland that runs along the Big Darby Creek in Gahanna, Ohio, and the second is a metropolitan park. Originally, I wanted to compare some aspect of the callery pear tree. I was thinking circumference. However, Blendon Woods was so good at managing the species that by the time I got up here, most of the seedlings had been cut down, and there was just only one callery pear tree in this area that I am in currently. So I decided to look at a native species, the red maple. I had noticed an abundance of them in Blendon Woods, Metro Park, but I hadn't seen very many in the subdivision woodland. So I thought that might be something good to compare. So here we are at the edge of the woodlands for the Orchard Hills subdivision of Gahanna, Ohio. This area is used for recreation by residents in the nearby neighborhoods. There is a bike trail and there are some trails that go through the woods. There are several types of invasive species in this area. One of them is honeysuckle. And the second one, which we'll see once we get closer to the woodland, is the callery pear tree, otherwise known as the Bradford tree, which was introduced from China, and then because of its ornamental value became popular on streets in suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. Here is one of the callery pear trees. In early spring, these trees will be covered in white flowers, and they are quite prolific in this area, along with the honeysuckle, as you see. Some native species that we have here include the red maple, this is a young red maple tree here, and there are not quite as many of them as there are the callery pear trees, unfortunately. Some wildlife species that you can see through this area include cottontail, white-tailed deer, the American robin, blue jays, cardinals, and there may even be some red foxes and coyotes. However, I have not personally seen them. So before, I wasn't aware of snake species in Orchard Hill, and I will just have to look this species up when I get back. But what a cool find. Blendon Woods is a 653-acre managed park comprising of woodland and grassland, and a 118-acre waterfowl refuge surrounding an 11-acre lake. Hello, I am Laura Pearson. Hello. So for my initial site walk of Blendon Woods, I used two transect lines of approximately 0.7 miles long. Flora and fauna species within a strip width of approximately 1.64 feet on either side of the transect line were observed. I used my smartphone camera to record the species I observed. and I took with me a map of the park and measuring tape. For the Orchard Hill initial site walk, I used 2 transect lines of approximately 0.27 miles and 2 transect lines of approximately 0.15 miles long. I also recorded the flora and fauna species observed on either side of the strip width with my smartphone camera. I chose to measure leaves because they are the most responsive part of a plant to their environment and can indicate changes in the environment stimuli such as light, water availability, temperature, nutrient availability, and soil type. My dependent variable was the location of leaves that I measured, and the independent variable was the leaf length measured in millimeters. How do individual leaf lengths of a population of red maple differ between the Orchard Hill subdivision and Blendon Woods Metro Park? I took with me a notepad to record measurements and a pen. I used the smart roller on my smartphone as it measured in millimeters just fine to measure the red maple leaves. I randomly selected 8 red maple specimens and then randomly selected 10 leaves from each red maple specimen to measure. I measured the leaf length from the tip to where the leaf joins the petiole and repeated this in each study area. I transferred these measurements into an Excel spreadsheet and prepared histograms. I calculated sample mean, sample variance, standard deviation, standard error, and the 95% confidence interval for each sample. My sample size for each location was 80 leaves. My mean in Orchard Hill was 8.69 millimeters. Sample variance was 7.97 millimeters squared. Standard deviation was 2.82 millimeters, and my standard error was 0.32 with a 95% confidence interval between 8.06 and 9.32. I believe that the histogram represents a normal distribution fairly well, with perhaps a slight left shift. For Blendon Woods, my sample mean was 6.95 millimeters. Variance was 3.96 millimeters squared. My standard deviation was 1.99 millimeters, and my standard error was 0.22. My 95% confidence interval was 6.5 to 7.39 millimeters. Once again, I do believe that my histogram represents a normal distribution. I can say that we are 95% confident that the unknown population mean in Orchard Hill is between 8.06 to 9.32 millimeters, and in Blendon Woods, we are 95% confident that the unknown population mean falls between 6.5 to 7.39 millimeters. Therefore, the average red maple leaf length in late April is greater in the Orchard Hill subdivision than in Blendon Woods Metro Park. I decided to also look at the difference in ant species between the 2 study sites. In Orchard Hill, I found carpenter ants and little black ants. The carpenter ants moved more slowly and were slightly larger. They had a rounded upper thorax and a very large head, whereas the little black ants moved quickly and were smaller, and they were distinguished by a very shiny black color. In Blendon Woods, I found cornfield ants and false honey ants. The cornfield ants did move faster than the carpenter ants I had found in Orchard Hill. They were about the same length, about a 1/4 inch long, whereas the false honey ants were smaller. They were about 1/8 of an inch long and ranged in color from light to very dark brown. The richness in both study sites was equal. The Shannon index in both study sites was low, and the evenness was higher in the Orchard Hill subdivision than in Blendon Woods. This means that the biodiversity in Orchard Hill is more even than in Blendon Woods Metro Park. However, I feel I would need to take a larger sample size and potentially repeat the study at several different sites to really get a better picture of biodiversity in both sites. Soil type, nutrient and water availability, temperature, and light influence plant health. I expected red maple leaves to be bigger, to be longer in Blendon Woods Metro Park. Red maple leaves may be longer in the Orchard Hill subdivision due to greater water and light availability based on visual observations. As the canopy layer is less developed in Orchard Hill, and there appears to be old agricultural irrigation channels that are filled with water and overflow at times. Here is my list of references. Thank you for watching. I look forward to watching everybody else's presentations